Boundless Authenticity podcast.
I think by now most of us are starting to understand that there is something not quite right going on in this world. Perhaps a collection of somethings all culminating into one big something. Perhaps this big something has been brewing for a very long time and is made of a large sequence of attacks on every living creature on this planet. Nothing is sacred anymore and sadly never has been. We are all in a spiritual war, a war for our minds, vital energy, our spirit. Our bodies are being systematically weakened and our energies slowly siphoned away, whether it is through the toxic chemicals in the air, food, water, or whether it's addiction to drugs, pharmaceuticals, alcohol, caffeine, sugar, sex, technology, or fear. But where does the siphon lead to? Well, if you're a person who has tapped into their spirituality, you may already know what I'm going to say. But if you're on the fence and you're just trying to get started on the path, then I need you to trust me momentarily and take this information and use it for your own critical analysis and research. The siphon leads to other dimensional beings who literally eat our vitality. This entire construct we call our dimension is made of light. However, there are spectrums of light that we cannot see. We can only see a small percentage, around 40% of the light spectrum, and these beings reside on those spectrums that we can't see with our physical eyes. These entities are literally attracted to our pain, fears, emotions, perversions, addictions, likes or dislikes, beliefs, and our energetic centers. They bind themselves to our energy centers depending on how they are stimulated. This is true for big and small traumas. And if you've heard me talk about how the emotional center of the brain is stimulated all day long by the thoughts we think, the food we eat, and the movies, TV, and music we consume, then you can understand that it is very easy to get cheap thrills. So if you really understand how cheap thrills are manufactured all day by the emotional and energy body, then you can figure out very quickly for yourself that our consciousness can be hijacked by these beings very easily and as fast as the speed of light. The entire system is designed to pull you away from spirit by getting you to place your attention on 5-cent gratification, cheap thrills. So what do I actually mean by that? Cheap thrills come in many forms. It can be scrolling on your phone, watching videos on YouTube, listening to music, learning the latest TikTok dance, or watching porn. It can be the many forms of processed or chemically enhanced foods in your kitchen, from coffee to frosted flakes and fast foods. These foods are all enhanced with flavoring that oftentimes isn't even listed on the labels of the items just to give you a cheap thrill that you then get addicted to. They trick you into thinking that they taste good and trigger neurotransmitters so you think that you feel good only for a moment while you are being poisoned slowly. For some people, it's getting high on cannabis or harder drugs. For others, it's alcohol or gambling. There are hardly any people on this planet who are completely clean and sober. Everyone is using something, and it's all to weaken minds, close hearts, and dampen souls for the purpose of harvesting life force. Entities are always on standby to siphon away your light. For a lot of people, what I'm saying is still hard to hear, and I get that. And it's even harder to break away from if they already know it. Many just resign to going with the flow because they can't see anyone else out there who is truly living an empowered life, free of it. Many will use the mere fact that they have found this podcast or other similarly positive resources using technology. But that's really just a justification for the addictions. What you are meant to learn, you would have learned by other means before this technology existed. I know how it feels to look around and see everyone mindlessly scrolling, or addicted to TV and music streaming services, or they're out drinking and some are out selling or buying bodies on the internet or in real life. It feels like you walked into a bar at midnight and everyone is stumbling around drunk except for you. And of course, a drunk person's favorite thing to say is, "I'm not drunk." People really believe that this is harmless. But these things really disempower you and strip you of the capacity to live up to your full potential in any area of your life. Have you ever realized how much time you have to spend out with friends drinking and smoking, stopping off at the Starbucks, doing family movie night, or scrolling through Reels or TikTok or Facebook, but when it comes time to do something for yourself that will grow you mentally, spiritually, emotionally, or physically, you are always tired or never have the time? I work with people all the time on their self-sabotage, and the ones who cannot, or rather don't want to detach from these things, don't succeed. They just don't, because they seem to be unable to learn life lessons. They seem not to be able to solve their mental health challenges and conquer any traumas, and they seem to be unable to create anything really good for themselves without losing it again very quickly. They can't concentrate. They're anxious, sad, angry, or consumed by sexual thoughts all day and all night, and they can't tap into their life force to push through and overcome their challenges. They don't have the life force because it's being siphoned away. They stay awake at night battling thoughts in their heads. They need caffeine and sugar to borrow energy from tomorrow to get a start on their day, and they repeat that day in, day out for anything up to a lifetime. They're stuck in a cycle of mediocrity. Many of them will actually fight to remain enslaved to these things and don't want to admit that it's destroying their destiny. And they certainly don't mind that passing on bad habits is doing the same for their children. What can be troubling at times is that when I give classes on values, hardly anyone puts integrity as one of their top values. This is troubling because without integrity, there is nothing else. All other values are inconsistent and can't be acted upon to the fullest. These people lacking integrity also fall by the wayside sooner rather than later, and oftentimes they make snarky remarks or try to make it seem as though I don't know what I'm talking about, and I let them go as clients. I have learned that I cannot want more for someone than what they want for themselves. And if they're not ready to see, hear, or understand, I can't make them either. I'm not here to force anyone. That's what the darkness does. The dark forces of the world have blinded their eyes to see, covered their ears so they cannot hear, and dampened their souls so that they cannot intuitively sense the dark path that they're walking. They've all been programmed with the incorrect idea that if they pursue pleasures of the five senses, that they will obtain joy, fulfillment, and success. When you ask a young boy or girl, what do they want to be when they grow up? You hardly ever hear, I want to be a good father or mother to my children. I want to be a virtuous person and make people feel comfortable, safe, joyful, valuable with my words and deeds. You hardly hear people say, I want to be there as a guiding light. I want to be dependable. I want to be reliable. I want to be loving and truthful. Instead, they feed you a description of a pipe dream that fits into the chaotic, cheap thrill world of slavery, money, and helplessness. So no matter what your ambitions are in life, poor choices will take them from you. What is hard for people to understand is that chasing a dream requires dedication, spirit, determination, focus, a strong mind, a loving heart, integrity, consistency, congruency, faith, and willpower. Cheap thrills will drain you of those things. Chasing a dream that is built upon obtaining worldly desires will eventually lead you into a spirit trap. Dark forces that run this world, they assist in the energy harvesting. They want people who chase dreams based on riches and all of the worldly desires that gratify the five-sense reality. They want influencers, rock stars, celebrities, porn stars, and OnlyFans models, millionaires, personal development gurus, and big-name pastors. They want more big companies to be founded and market more products for your consumption because it all fuels their perverted agenda. They want you to think that consumption of media and participation on social media is normal. They want you to think that the slang you use is normal. They want you to think that your sexuality is imperfect so that you throw yourself into a pit of confusion, shame, and guilt and make detrimental choices. They want you to think that there's a political party that is good or bad, or involved in the latest story about a war, or a shooting, or a rape, or a sports game, so that you get upset that your team didn't win. They even want you to be involved in conspiracy theories. It's more than just distraction tactics and subconscious programming. They want you to lose the best part of yourself in the process so that they can feed on that. When I say the best part of yourself, I mean your soul. They want you to agree that their cheap thrills are useful and normal so that your soul gets pushed out and your consciousness gets hijacked. Yes, these entities and the dark forces work together to harvest your energy and keep you stagnant. A stagnant person is a person living lies and experiencing pain. Oftentimes, there will be an agreement to work on a person to harvest their energy. For example, if a person is being abused, they will be feeding one side of a team of entities with their pain, and the abuser will be feeding the other side with their fury. If a person feels stuck in a dead-end job, oppressed by the culture of the country they live in, or abandoned in a bad relationship, there will also be demons waiting to feed off the experience. And yes, I know I have to be careful how I say demons because it's religious or whatever it is that bothers you about that word. But in reality, it doesn't matter. We need these words to describe these phenomena. So stick with me. If you're watching horror movies or listening to music with sub-bass, then you are also inviting entities to feed on the cheap thrills generated by those experiences. These entities are usually attached to the media we consume, or they are attracted by your limbic system's reactions to what you consume. It is very important to keep your consciousness clear. People get addicted to their favorite songs and TV shows, however, and this is problematic because they're addicted to the cheap thrills. A person likely will not connect the dots between the voices in their head and the content they are consuming, because once you get that cheap thrill, the entities bind to you and begin to take control of your thoughts and emotions, and you are no longer the only person, or the only being, I should say, that's thinking inside your head. These entities can hide the truth of a situation and about yourself from you, and they can keep you from self-realization. These entities have their own personalities, and they have their own preferences of energy that they want to feed on. It's kind of like how you prefer KFC over Pizza Hut, or whatever it is that you like. In other words, whichever energy center you have a weakness in, they will feed off of the opposite energy to that center. If you are watching porn, these entities will attach to your base energy center and feed off of your insecurity, need for sexual contact, or they may attach to your sacral chakra and feed off of your creative drive, your need for gratification, and your sadness. If you've ever met someone who talks a lot and never lets anyone get a word in, and you felt drained after having this person talk at you, that person probably had an entity attachment in their throat center. If a person had an abusive parent, they may feel like their personal power has been taken away, and that resides at the solar plexus. A person with a weak energy center will often be weak there for life, hence making them susceptible to entity attachment for a lifetime. Some people are carrying these entities from childhood and have no idea of it. You would be surprised to find out exactly how much anxiety, depression, and suicidal ideations come from these entities. Have you ever just felt sad for no reason, without experiencing any triggers, and you didn't know where that came from? That's what entities can do. They love keeping people in these states of fear and distress that they can eat up all the frantic energy that goes along with it. They will often be the reason people think that they aren't good enough somehow, and that they are worthless, and that they're going to die alone, have a heart attack, that they're ugly, that nobody likes them, and the list goes on and on and on and on. Any voices you hear that tell you to harm other people will likely be as a result of these entities as well. These entities love eating disorders, anorexia, body dysmorphia, transgenderism, homosexuality, BDSM, and other weird fetishes like dressing up like a baby. They love convincing people to cut themselves or self-harm in other ways. I am saying these things not to rub anyone the wrong way, but to relay my experience working with people. This is literally what I have discovered to be true, and unfortunately, the truth doesn't stop being the truth just because you don't want it to be true. These entities love heroin, cocaine, fentanyl, crack, MDMA, psychedelics, marijuana, caffeine, sugar, and pharmaceuticals. You name a drug, they love it because all of them weaken you. They all create holes in your energy and they can get in. Anytime you do something and you have no recollection of doing it, you could also be dealing with an entity attachment. They will wake you up in the middle of the night and then you have an unending stream of negative thoughts. They love to torture you, and if you're asleep, they can't feed on you. They love tired people because they are weakened and will be less likely to put up a mental fight. Even when that person does sleep, they will experience the worst nightmares ever. These entities ruin entire families by creating drama between members, and they destroy relationships by convincing one person to cheat or causing fights all the time. And again, in situations like that, they are working both sides as teams to manipulate one person into starting an argument, and then when the other person argues back, another entity will feed. This stuff goes deep, man. They love self-destructive behaviors. They love it when you watch hours of Netflix instead of reading a book that will grow you. I cannot tell you how many people have come to me for help, and I gave them a list of things to do for homework between sessions, and for one reason or another, they just can't do them, or they won't do them. When I tell people not to do certain things, the entities will make sure the person ends up doing those things, and even more than they ordinarily would do. Just to prove a point, it seems. It seems like the entities actually just want to mess with these people. They don't want a person to be free, or happy, or empowered at all. I have to be honest, again, once I notice that a client isn't following instructions, and they can't give me a clear reason why, I usually get rid of that client. I'm not here to battle the forces of evil on their behalf. The right person to help them do that will come along. Trust me on that. They love when you listen to the news. In fact, many news stations actually have entities hovering right above the building. The television acts as a portal for these entities to enter your space and jump right onto you when you watch news or anything else. The same thing happens on your phone when you're scrolling. Many churches have entities hanging above the buildings waiting to feed on the negativity of you confessing to the priest. Churches are also where people go when they feel down on their luck and are looking for solace. So these entities hang out there waiting for new people to bind to. Have you ever met a hoarder or someone who lives in complete filth 24/7? These beings love that because it creates an environment of chaos and clutter for them to feed. They especially love bars, whether it's your local pub or the bar in your house. Time to throw out the scotch if you know what's good for you. They gather there because they know that you poke a hole in your energy body every time you take a drink, and they can slither on in. When we experience trauma of any kind, it splits the psyche and allows space for a new compartment in your mind to be created, and an entity will move into that space. This happens because the limbic system has a reaction. The prefrontal cortex deactivates, and the person shuts down and goes into a protective shell in their mind in order to survive a traumatic experience. They have to then create an alternate personality in order to get through the experience, and the person's true identity gets buried. The person carries on the rest of their life seemingly normal, all the while being fragmented and taken over by entities which are now making choices for them. These entities want people to have broken psyches because it's easy to control someone who has been split. The same thing happens when you let your children watch TV, cartoons, movies, fucking Barney, YouTube, and of course, Disney movies, just to name a few things. Be very careful with New Age and spiritualism too, especially channeling. These entities are amazing at what they do. They are the best in the universe, and they can pretend to be anyone, including Pleiadians, Arcturians, the Galactic Federation, Jesus, Mary Magdalene, Buddha, a dead relative, you name it, they can fake it. I have personally coached a lot of Reiki healers and New Agers that were talking with so-called spirit guides that were really just malevolent entities in disguise. So again, I know what I'm talking about. Have you ever had a self-destructive behavior when you kicked it? You developed another bad habit just to replace that one? That's entities for you. If you tried to stop smoking and started scrolling endlessly on TikTok or eating candy bars, that's entity tactics trying to find a new way to control you. They just want you addicted to anything at all. Addiction to smoking weed creates holes and tears in your auric field as well. Have you ever wondered why there's a whole culture created around being a stoner? Think about it. It's not to help you. It's to help the entities feed. Have you wondered why psychedelics is such a big deal these days? It's to help the entities feed. It has nothing to do with helping you heal traumas and reaching enlightenment as you would like to think. Ask any shaman. There are a lot of well-intentioned people talking about it. But that's also how people get entities. It really only takes one taste of ayahuasca to invite entities, and you wouldn't even know. Also, if you haven't heard me talk about the psychedelics agenda by the Tavistock Institute, then you really need to read the Tavistock Institute of Human Relations by Dr. John Coleman. Email me at selfsabotageinfo@proton.me. I will send you a link to the audiobook if you can't find it. Now, I can't sit here and talk about anything that I don't really truly know about. I discovered that we're being used as puppets by these entities and dark forces years ago. They don't want you to know. And the more you resist considering this information, the worse off we all are going to be. I started going through all aspects of my life with a fine-toothed comb 15 years ago. And I realized exactly how much of my self-sabotage was dictated by entities. I came to find out that I had them on me, and that certain members of my family who were abusers and aggressors in my life also had them. I learned that people in society who seemed to make life difficult all had them. I learned that other musicians I knew had them. Girls I dated had them. People that were close friends had them. I learned that these entities triangulate and gather around you in groups, and that is how they can establish a stronghold over someone who has the potential to be particularly powerful because they have a tremendous amount of light. And that's good food. That's good eating. I had many supernatural experiences with them, and it still took me forever to put two and two together because they will go to great lengths to suppress you and infiltrate every aspect of your life. Years ago, my drinking and drug use was fueled by entities, and I can tell you firsthand that even my ability to play guitar, which was the thing that eventually led me to opportunities to be saved and get into this business, was being dictated by entities. Now, don't get me wrong. I can still sing and play guitar and do all the musical things I used to, but not nearly as well and with as much edge, because those entities love music, and they will imbue you with gifts and talents and take over your body, and it feels as though something else is animating you. There were hundreds of times I played shows, and people would say to me that I played and performed exceptionally well, and I had no idea what it is that I did, but I knew that it felt like something came over me, and that would be it. I would have no recollection the next day. And as if that wasn't scary enough, in my drinking and drugging days, I would get into fights and do all kinds of other things and have absolutely no recollection at all that I did it. Maybe one day I will tell you all the story about a guy I used to hang out with whose nickname was literally Satan. Those were wild times for me, dark times. But in a twist of fate, they brought me here to the most positive position I could have possibly found myself in. So anyone can overcome and reclaim their light. I just thought I'd let you know. The problem with technology, poison food, caffeine, sugar, alcohol, and drugs is that everyone has a justification for doing so that is coming from others. Those reasons are all coming from hijacked will and not free will. We have a tendency to believe that we're making these choices on our own, but we are not making a choice if we are operating from a subconsciously embedded program purposely put there by dark forces. We are certainly not choosing freely if an entity has hijacked our consciousness, even when it is through trauma or other means. Our thoughts are hardly ever really our own. This is why everything is cleverly designed to entice us and lure us. If it was good for us by nature, we would never have to be convinced or conditioned into thinking that these things are good options. Truth just is. Society is moving forwards into a collective anti-life perspective at a time where there is supposedly great spiritual upheaval and many are waking up. But where are these awakened ones that everyone is speaking of? Virtue seems to be dead and perversion is very much alive. Very few are making choices from an empowered position and refuse to partake in the cheap thrills agenda and instead would rather give themselves over to the darkness in exchange for a few minutes of sensory pleasure. Sovereignty is found through your spirit, not convenience. They need you to stay addicted to cheap thrills and give away your spirit. One drink, one smoke, one coffee, one cookie, one porn video, one movie, 5 minutes of scrolling on social media is enough to do the job, to keep you enslaved and derail you on your journey. When you give these things to your child, you are automatically stripping their free will from them by handing them over to the dark forces that run this world through perception management. It's time to take charge of your life. Well, how do you do that? Put down the cheap thrills. It will be hard. Know that all of life is tremendously hard and that there is very little that will be easy. But it's time to step into your power and be strong. Whenever you feel the urge to do that thing you know is keeping you hostage, take a walk, read a book, do anything that will grow you, and over time, the hold over you will weaken. Reprogram your brain to want to be strong and growth-oriented. Learn to observe and question your thoughts and recognize the lies that you live by. I'm Jahan Sator, self-sabotage coach and host of the Boundless Authenticity podcast, and I'm telling you, you have power within you that is bigger than any situation or circumstance you find yourself in. Simply say no. If you want to contact me, feel free to do so at selfsabotageinfo@proton.me.
You're listening to the Boundless Authenticity podcast, where we discuss everything related to the evolution of human consciousness.
At the very least, people need to understand that the United States builds bunkers, which are basically cities underground, every 3 months.
Basically, when you dream, you tap into your subconscious. It is your nocturnal intuition, your creativity and imagination unchained from conscious reason, ego and logic.
They're biologically alive, but they have no soul. They have AI consciousness. They can alter your conscious of the brain if they get in the brain.
We live in a multidimensional reality, whether it comes through esoteric information in the spiritual realms or the UFO people, experiencers, or mainstream through quantum physics and through mainstream science now realizing that parallel dimensions probably exist.
We're all spiritual beings. We're all having these human experiences. We've heard that phrase over and over and over. But what does that really mean?
You know, all of the questions of life, we have these answers inside of our souls.
We're ultimately studying the nature of what it is to be human, good and evil, our psychology, how we think, and our health. That's why I love Bruce Lee's great quote, all knowledge is ultimately self-knowledge.
The Boundless Authenticity podcast.